Well, welcome back to the So There I Was podcast. I'm your host again, Travis Womack, and today I have a special guest named Ash Hess, a guy that I've recently come to meet through the awesomeness that is LinkedIn. It's amazing how the power of a just liking someone's post and making a comment can turn into a guest. And I'm really anxious to hear what Ash has to say and share just one from his current job and just the mass amount of posts you have of shooting guns. So that alone is gonna be fun. But you're 22 years in the Army, retired in the past couple of years, and just tell us about yourself and a little quick introduction, and we'll go from there.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. Again, just like you said, LinkedIn. It's that's my favorite social media platform. Just because dealing with gun stuff and the levels that I did with gun stuff, and when we talk about that, it'll start to come clear for anybody that's listening. But when you're dealing with gun stuff to high levels, just to be able to LinkedIn tells you who they are, so you can just almost instantaneously just be like, okay, this dude's he might have done stuff cool there, but he's not who he thinks he is. So that's one of my favorite things about it, because I do things that are a little bit get people fired up, and that's just fun. So again, appreciate having me on.
Oh, and for those that they won't see the video version, Ash has an epic beard. I was
Yeah,
that is outstanding. So
clean
I had mine,
once in a
I had
while.
mine about 2 inches. I was like, I can't do it. It's too far.
I gotta trim it down every time that we go to like a major, especially like something that's a government show, like SHOT Show. They don't care too much, but we've got AUSA coming up here, so we'll be in DC. And so they start giving me the look. So I always run it out as I can, like right before AUSA, and then tune it up for that, just to get their heart rate up.
AOC is a lot of fun. That's a really fun for anybody who's ever been to that event. It's pretty cool to see stuff that you're like, okay, we're never gonna have that, but it's really cool that y'all made it.
It's really cool. And then when you get in on the industry side, and it's a double-edged sword, because standing in a booth all day long, 8 hours a day, and people coming up, and I got some funny stories about that. Some definitely no shit there was stories, and just from AUSA. But then afterwards, when you get to go to like some of the other parties and stuff like that after the show, like we were leaving the show one day and passed right by Mark Milley and Leroy Petrie, and they're getting ready to go to some event inside. They're like checking each other's uniforms and stuff, and you just want to be like, "Hey, sir, hey, Sarnt, good to meet you." And you're just like, "Nope, they're busy. I know what they're doing. They're getting ready to go be cool." And yeah, I'll just give a head nod to the chief of staff of the Army. That's what Mark Miller, chief of staff, and a Medal of Honor winner. I'll just give a head nod and a thumbs up, and just keep on walking.
And to say I was in the proximity of and move on.
I seen them for real.
Get that 20-foot selfie and they photo bomb.
There, and you're just like, "Hey, what's up?" Yep, done
So
that.
when did you get into like so what was your job in the Army? You mentioned something about doing a lot of writing for like marksmanship stuff. What was that?
So in 2012, just picked up E7. I've been on the list for a while. And we came back from deployment 2011, and I'd been in the unit since 2004. So this is 2012. We just got back from deployment. And Sergeant Major was basically like, "I'm tired of you being here. Go find a job." Um, so, and people tell stories about that happening, but occasionally it does happen, and they're just like, "I don't care where you go find somebody that will cut your orders to go there." And I ended up at the Light Fighter School for 10th Mountain, and I've been doing a lot of shooting since about 2008. And I'd gone to schools, that sort of thing. You go to this guy's class and this ninja guy's class, and just been doing a lot of shooting, and had some pretty hefty opinions on Army marksmanship, what we were teaching, what we weren't teaching, that sort of stuff. And ended up at Light Fighter School, and was teaching uh, at the time it was called MWARM. It was the Mountain Leaders Advanced Rifle Marksmanship course, or something weirdo like that. And so then when I took that over, we started rewriting some curriculum, and the general wanted it to match Doctrine. He's like, whatever you're teaching to the division, he's like, I don't care what you do. He's like, but when you're teaching stuff to my soldiers in my division, they're going to be able to open the book and see what you're teaching them. And I was like, okay, that's fair. So I opened the book and I'm just like, this is terrible. Who wrote this? And in there, there's like a link to an email address. And then I had a buddy at Fort Benning. So I was like, hey, I emailed this email address and didn't get anything back. And he's like, well, give me a couple days. And then I get an email from the guy that was the chief of weapons and gunnery at .D, which is, the training directorate. And he's like, what's wrong with the book? And I was like, well, and then, going to, so this is, he's like, who are you? And I was like, well, I'm teaching this course. I work directly for the two-star general. There's a captain in between me and a two-star general. We're teaching marksmanship and all this sort of stuff. So that's who I am. And this is what I need the book to say. And so we kept good communication going on for about 2 years while I ran that. Well, then I ended up on orders for Fort Benning. And since I caused so much ruckus with this book, they were like, hey, guess what? You bitched
Right.
about it. You can fix it. So I got there, and basically the guidance that I was given was write the book that you would want the Army to have. They're like, you retire in 2 years, so your job is to write this book. If this book gets published, cool. If it doesn't get published, save all your files, retire, publish your own damn book. And, because they just expect me to come up with some weirdo stuff. Well, I had the help, and I'd ran 10th Mountains program. And I had friends in 82nd Airborne. I had friends in 101st. Had friends that are National Guard shooters, and just had buddies basically pretty much everywhere. And I'm like, hey, dudes, I got the keys to this book. So let's start writing this. So we made a Facebook page, and it was just us on it. It started out about 15 people, across the Army, all dudes who were passionate about shooting and training shooting and that sort of stuff. And then ended up, by the time that we got the book, about 6 months into writing this thing, we had 150 people on there from National Guard units and competitors and SOCOM dudes and all sorts of stuff. And what I was doing was I'd take a paragraph and, just anything with shooting trigger control, right? And we say it like it's the thing. And I say trigger control, and you've got a whole paragraph that just pops into your head, right? Well, everybody's got that. So I'd be like, all right, let's talk trigger control. And everybody would start commenting on it. And then when the conversation kind of died down, I go and I find the good comments, turn that into a paragraph, post it back in there, and they'd be like, and they'd all argue about it again. So basically what we did was we vetted every sentence that was in there with, basically a core of like 50 dudes, but up to 150 people that basically we crowdsourced this book. We started doing that. That was probably March of 2015 when we started doing that. And then by September, we had a book. And we put it through editing, and we got graphics done on it. And the graphics, because everybody's got their own opinion about shooting. So you look at a picture of somebody shooting, and you're like, hey, their hands and their upper body's really good, but their feet are fucked up. But
Right.
this ninja graphics guy, his name's Buddy, and I'd be like, I'd take 2 pictures, and it'd be like this dude's legs and this person's upper body, and I'd be like, hey, bud, I need these, because everything in the book is line drawings. I was like,
Oh
I
yeah.
need these legs on this upper body with this gun. And Buddy'd be like, okay. Like 2
Draw it
days
up.
later, graphic. So in September, I think it was, September, we sent it out for Army-wide staffing. And basically what that is, I don't know if you ever got involved in that or not, but
I was Army staff for 4 years.
yeah, so they got a link and everybody gets an opportunity to bitch about it. And so went to staffing, 45-day staffing in September. We got it back. Basically December, we worked on it a little bit right before Christmas, block leave, all that sort of stuff. Finished it up for staffing. We finished up stuff in January, did some rewrites on it, staffed it locally again after that. and then sent it up to Big Army, and they published it. I think it was like the 15th of May. Just says May on it, I think, but they published it in 16. So we went from nothing to a published Army book in a little over a year. And we did all kinds of. Initially, it was called the Gunfighter Manual, and you being a former O grade, I don't know if you guys do this or not. I know you did it because all the O grades do it. If I put something in front of you, and the first thing that you find that's wrong with it that you don't like, you basically you stop reading, and you don't care what the rest of the thing is, right? That's your thing. So we called the book the Gunfighter Manual, and instantaneously, and we had gunfighter in it. We didn't just put it on the cover. We had gunfighter and soldier. That's all that said in it. And they were just like, nope, it can't be called the Gunfighter Manual. Every reference to gunfighter, and basically that was our smokescreen. Because what we did was we took the term rifle fundamentals away from the Army. So since 2016, the rifle fundamentals, the 4 fundamentals of marksmanship, have been gone doctrinally since 2016. And that's some of the things that people don't like. The things that are in the fundamentals are still in it, but what we do is we teach what we had in some of the people that was on that staff of building the book, dual master's degree in sports psychology. So when we were talking about shooting, we had a sports psychologist, master's degree sports psychologist, that was taking what we were saying and translating it into sports psychology, and then giving it to us that way. And then we would translate that back into Army. So basically, we use the shot process, and that's what the Army has now, is the shot process. So if you wanted to shoot anything from the howitzers that you were talking about earlier, back to 105s, get rid of the 80 stuff, but back to 105s where they'd actually shoot a pistol, rifle, a bow, whatever it is, right? You have to grab it, you have to aim it, you have to press the trigger, and you have to see if it worked or not, right? That is a basic shot process. I grab it, I aim it, I press the trigger, it goes boom, I see if I need to shoot it or not, or shoot again or not. So all those things that we knew as the rifle fundamentals are in there. There's, position and aiming and all those sort of stuff, but we put it into a process. And when we started, as we were building this stuff out, I was teaching some like little civilian courses and stuff like that. Because if I teach a 18-year-old kid that's a construction worker or a college student how to shoot a pistol, and if I teach him how to shoot a pistol and I teach him and it's maybe a little bit wrong, I'm not sending him off to war, right? So we were basically vetting this against people that had never shot before, kids, stuff like that, trying it on the 18, 19-year-old mindset to see if it worked with them. And it was working really well because it was all, it's psychology and actual shooting experience based. And so we messed up an Army test because they were testing how well the privates retain knowledge. So they'd be like, okay, they got taught marksmanship on week 2. And then they talked to them again at week 4. And then they talked to them again at week 9 of basic training about marksmanship and seeing how much they retained. And we were talking to one company of soldiers, and we were talking about, we even still said fundamentals and all that sort of stuff, but we're like, hey, this is really a process. And you do these things, and you do this with everything that you're shooting. And what ended up happening was those privates retained the shooting knowledge better. So that one company skewed the results of that entire study, because 9 weeks later, they were like, yeah, I do this and I do this and I do this. And they were like, and the other privates were just like, I don't know, I haven't seen a gun in 6 weeks, so who cares?
Well, that falls in the same thing of I remember, gosh, it's been forever now. Like walking through feeding chamber and locking firing, unlocking, extracting, like to understand, like you can recite words all day long,
Right.
but you know what they mean. It's like if it's just a chant, like a poem that you're reciting versus like understanding, like, no, this is the elements of a bullet. There's the casing, the primer, to the powder, the projectile, and when I teach people marksmanship all the time, it's the first thing I start with, like, do you understand what is in this little piece of metal right here? And if you don't, then I know where we're at. If you don't understand the chemistry that's taking place, and then getting into the physics is a whole different ballgame, obviously.
Right. And that's so what I was trying to, and this was the seed that started it all, was I'm using extra time, weekends, all this sort of stuff to shoot better, right? And I'm spending money that I shouldn't have to spend because I'm in the United States Army and I shoot this gun, and it shouldn't be anything that I have to learn, right? So as I'm doing putting all this work into it, and my buddies aren't, we go to the range and they're like, "Hey, don't jerk the trigger, fix your breathing," and they're saying it like, not necessarily quite hands on hips, but they're saying it in that tone, and you've been around it where they're
Oh
like,
yeah.
they're saying it to the soldier, they're saying it so the sergeant major hears it, and they're like, "Hey, troop, fix your breathing,"
You change
and
your sight picture.
yeah, and it's like they're saying something, right? But they're not saying anything because I don't know, right? And the thing that I pick on was we were picking on LinkedIn the other day, breathing, right?
That's a great video. It's so
Yeah,
true.
these NCOs, and I was an NCO and you were an NCO, and the NCOs are out there, and there's a lot of NCOs that are doing great and wonderful things, and not to, and I tend to pick on, and tomorrow on LinkedIn, just so you know, I'm going to be picking on the NCO Corps. I know there's NCOs out there doing great and wonderful things, right? I got it. I was whatever. I was worse, right? But if they don't know what you're talking about, just saying words doesn't
Yeah.
make them understand, right? And fix your breathing. So that back it off a little bit. You're like, all I can do with my breathing is inhale and exhale.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it, right? So when you tell me fix my breathing and I'm frustrated, right? You put it back into that soldier perspective because we all had those days where the bullet just wasn't going where it was supposed to go, no
Yeah.
matter what you're trying to do. And then some douche is like, "Hey, fix your breathing." And you're like, "Motherfucker, if I could fix my breathing, if that was the problem, if I knew what to do, I would do it. Because I want to get done with this shooting, get on the range, qualify, go home, eat chow, whatever the hell is going on. I want to stop shooting this gun. But all you're telling me, Sarge, is to fix my breathing."
Right.
And so when I started teaching shooting, that was my initial thing, was they come in there and be like, "All right, what does it mean when I say don't jerk the trigger?" And all these young NCOs would be like, "Don't jerk the trigger." What does that mean? What does that look like? How, when you look at a soldier shooting, what tells you they just jerking the trigger? Well, I don't know. I just tell them not to jerk the trigger and then they shoot better. So I'm like, all right, how do we fix this? Now, this is 2012, and you bounced to 2015. I've got the keys to the Doctrine, right?
Yeah.
Book that tells everything. So I'm like, how do I make sure everybody reads this book? And what is the one way with any kind of regulations? Well, I mean, think about when you're going to the board. Did you read all the doctrine, all the FMs? And I don't know when you went to the board the first time, but did you read the
Like,
FM?
you don't want to hear my story about promotion. It'll make you really mad. I never
You
saw a
probably did.
board.
You got a shitty study guide, whether it was on a phone or whether it's still the big one that the unit had that was a 3-ring binder, and you studied the stupid ass board questions, right? So I was like, how do I reach every NCO that's going to the board? And if I delete fundamentals out of the book, And then the board questions are saying, what is the shot process? Then everybody's kind of forced to at least open this thing up and be like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is going on? Right? Because if
E5 is the place to start with that for sure. Absolutely.
so you're sitting on the board, your first sergeant, and and all the first sergeants will deny this, and sergeant majors will deny this, and they will deny this until they're in front of the mirror. They have their training room and CO print them out questions on their subjects for the board. We all know they do it. We've all seen it. Just a little bit of dirty laundry right there, right? So they're and I imagine this, and it happened. I got a story about how this happened. But first sergeant goes in, doesn't even look at them, goes into the promotion board, is going to ask about the 4 fundamentals of marksmanship, looks at a piece of paper and it says, what is the shot process? And he's like, sorry, I had a phone call come in. We're back?
Yeah, we good.
All right. Yeah, my phone started. I think Verizon sold my number to some spammers. But so the looks down at looks down at his piece of paper and says, what is the shot process? And it's not asking about the fundamentals. And so he's going to be like, what? He's just going to roll with it because he's a first sergeant on the board. He's just going to roll with it. But afterwards, he's going to be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And we immediately, as soon as this thing published, I sent emails to every study guide company that was out there and told them about the new book, told them I'd help them with any questions that they had. Didn't expect them to read it all the whole time. I give them sample questions, all sorts of stuff. And I reached out to one of my guys that I knew was getting ready to go to the board, and I'm like, hey, what are you using for a study guide? What's the preferred study guide right now? Because I'm at E7 and I haven't even thought about board questions in fucking years. And he told me what it was, so we hammered on that guy pretty hard. And he was like 3 days later, he's got it updated to the new manual. But like I said, this kid's getting ready to go to the board, and he's a good kid. He's super smart, but he liked to fuck with first sergeants and sergeant majors. You know, and I was like, dude, if you do that, you might get booted out of the board. And he's like, I don't give a fuck. I'm getting out anyway. And I was like, okay. So he goes into the board, and the first sergeant was like, what are the 4 fundamentals of marksmanship? And he had it rehearsed down because that's the question that everybody asked, right? He had it rehearsed, and he First Sergeant, I don't know what you're referring to as the fundamentals, but in accordance with TC 322.9, published May of 2016, the shot process is, and he goes down through the thing. The First Sergeant and Sergeant Major's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's just like, this book published, and this is like December. He's like, this book published in May. I happened to read it. That is the current doctrine. And of course, them being Sergeant Majors and First Sergeants, they're like, pause the board, and they send the runner out there to go get it. And they're like, if you find out you'll never get promoted if you're lying to us, but really, and they do the peacock thing, right? Yeah, sure shit. They download it and they're in the PDF searching for fundamentals and doing all this sort of stuff. And they come back in and hey, you're promotable, get out. And then they had a big sergeant major meeting and all sorts of stuff. But but that was the intent, right? Because if I get E5, it's just like you said, we start at the team leader level, and they're having to see this stuff when they're going to the promotion board, and they bring it back, and they're just like, "Hey, sorry, that's not the doctrine anymore." And then now we start embarrassing staff sergeants and sergeant first class because they don't. Yeah, then start having effects, and so May of 2016 that published. Since then, because you can go on APD and you can check to see what books are getting downloaded. That book has been the no lower than 5th most downloaded book from APD every month since May of 2016. Right after that, we actually crashed APD because I was working with a Facebook thing called Primary and Secondary, and we put it out in a podcast, and they were pretty popular at the time. And I was just like, hey, this thing published, go download it. It's pretty cool. And I've been given snippets on it and everything. As soon as it published, that next day we crashed the website for about 4 hours because APD doesn't get that much traffic. You know, so the whole internet is not going, hey, I'm gonna go download an Army book today. So
Belvoir doesn't have that kind of push through bandwidth.
and that in turn, we started writing the pistol book, and then from there they were like, hey, what should the rifle qualification look like? And then they were like, hey, I was working at infantry school. They were like, this is like December of 17, so a year later. No, it was December of 16. So we published in May. December of 16, infantry school sergeant major was like, hey, on the 15th of January, we're having a meeting and we'll lay out your proposal for the rifle qualification changes. And 15th of January came, and that was the last thing he said about it. 15th of January came, and it was meeting time. And we walked in there, and a bunch of people walked into this meeting, and it was my boss had his plan that I took up there and presented as his plan. And then AMU had their plan. And then I had the failure plan in my pocket. And because what we had done while we were drum, we were basically playing with the qualification, trying to make it more realistic. Just playing with positions. You can't do anything with the computer, just playing with positions. And when my bosses, because my boss wanted to have like extra rounds and all this sort of stuff and all these things, and it'd take like 3 weeks, it looked like tank gunnery. I knew that one wasn't going to fly.
Yes.
And
16 tables, that's not gonna work.
yeah, and the AMU plan was cool, but it would have took probably about $80 million per installation to apply the AMU plan.
Okay.
And yeah, so they're not going to do that, right? The rules were you can't have any more bullets and you can't spend any money. So how do you change your qualification to get more effect?
Dirt.
Right, yeah. And so I was like, well, I do have one more plan in my pocket that I like to present before this meeting ends. And I put it up on the board, and it was 4 positions. It had 3 magazine changes in it. And the infantry commandant was in there, and he was like, well, Sergeant Hess, what do we get from this qual? And I was like, well, sir, I was like, we get some more modern positions, which isn't hard. There's just things here. If you look at this qual, it kind of looks like a mission, because if you come off a helicopter, your first position is going to be unsupported. And then if you're shooting from inside, down a hallway or something like that, you're going to be shooting from the wall. If you're shooting from a clock, something like that, I was like, all these positions are realistic. I was like, and then you get to fix something that has been a negligence on the U.S. Army's part since the Vietnam War. And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, not saying this doesn't happen, but the Army, who checks to see if I have all my cavities filled and checks to see if I have all my vaccinations and checks to see if I have a hangnail before I deploy, has never checked to see if a soldier can reload a magazine under stress. The Army never did that. Squad leaders did that. Platoon leaders did that. Platoon sergeants did that. We did it, right? And we made Joe practice changing magazines because we might have to do this if we go to war, that sort of stuff. But the Army couldn't tell you where a soldier could change a magazine in his rifle under stress. And I was like, if we do it this way, your throughput, you can actually run a line of soldiers, a qualification, basically a firing order, every 3 minutes and 45 seconds. You can have a new firing order going. Right now it's 12 minutes. And you can do it in every 3 minutes and 45 seconds, you can have another fire shooting. And they were like, that's not possible. And I was like, I've got video. This is how long it takes from the time this soldier steps up to the firing position. So the time the next soldier steps up to the firing position is 12 minutes. And doing it this way because the tower was always involved. So once with the new qualification, the tower goes, watch your lane. The tower doesn't do anything with the qualification until they say ceasefire. They're completely cut out of it. Because what would happen in the tower, especially nowadays, and I'm using my phone for the podcast, but nowadays, what's the tower operator doing? And this is my phone right now. What's the tower operator doing? He pushes the button. Is that click? Watch your lane. Click.
Oh, Facebook Reels.
Facebook, and the qual stops,
Oh, yeah.
and he's like, "Oh shit! Watch your lane," and he clicks the button again.
Red on the
Right?
right, red on the left. Yeah, do that every
Yeah.
single time.
Ready on the left, ready on the right. Shooters ready. Mix up. All that bullshit. We cut it out.
You change your position, get out of the foxhole, and assume it was prone supported.
Reload your gun because you moved, and now they change. Now they shoot 10 rounds, and they shoot the first one standing as a fast ready is now standing.
Yeah.
And then they shoot fast ready standing, they drop prone, they fire. Basically, it goes one target, two target presentation, three target presentation, four target presentation. I think it goes two and then one, however, wherever that 10 is in there.
Yeah.
And they check magazines on their own. They've got from the time the last target goes down to the time the next target pops is like 7 seconds. So in 7 seconds, you have to reload the gun and change position. And they go prone unsupported to prone supported, then kneeling supported, then standing supported. So they got to go at one point, they go from prone to kneeling supported on a barricade and have to do a reload. And if they don't get it done in time, there's no alibis, there's no pausing. If you're still fighting with your gun, which you're going.
Basically, you're in a firefight, which is how it is.
Right.
It is.
You sucked, so your score is dropping. The other thing that we did was we put 5 300s on it because you used to be able to qualify expert without hitting a 300-yard target.
Yeah, you skip them. You'll save that bullet. Yeah.
So now with 300s on there, so if you don't shoot the 300, you're not going to be expert. And then there's 11 targets that are past 250. So there's five 300s, and then there's 6 250s. So if you can't hit anything more than 200 yards, you can't even get sharpshooter. So just by changing those numbers, that makes the qualification easy enough. If you practice, you can still shoot expert and you can still do all these things. But what we wanted was a hard enough to where if units didn't do any practice and didn't do anything for it, they basically they just grab Joe out of the motor pool, drive him out to the range and tell him to shoot his gun, he's going to fail. And that is like literally from, that became official in 2020.
Yeah.
So past 3 years, 4 years almost, get dudes hit me up on Facebook or LinkedIn. They're just like, "Hey, my unit just went to do the qualification, and we told the CO that we needed to do practice and we need to do dry fire, and that was not his priority. And we got there and we had a 30% pass rate." I was like, "That is exactly what I want."
Yeah.
Because that's where we have to hit. We have to hit the commander. Because the commander's got to sit in front of the battalion commander, the company commander's got to sit in front of the battalion commander and explain.
That sucks. It's a
Yeah.
terrible meeting.
Yeah. So we attack the points. We're that experience in the Army. We attack the points. We wanted to get the knowledge down to the team leader by doing the promotion boards. And then we wanted to make it painful for the commander, because if the commander cares about it, the generals, every general sits around, when he shows up and he's just like, "I'm now your commanding general. My priorities are fitness, marksmanship, blah, blah, blah," right? And they say it. And having talked to a lot of generals in my last 5 years in the Army, talked to a lot of generals, they all mean it. They all want good shooters out there, but they're like, "I've got a whole division or more, got 18,000 plus soldiers that I'm worried about. I don't have the time to see if the team leaders are out dry firing with their dudes." And so, the intent was there, but there was no forcing function. So now QTB slides and promotion boards is what we basically attacked.
Right.
And
It's pretty smart fielding on y'all. Now, I have to give you props because, not to interrupt you there, but I was I was on the Army G1 for 4 years, and we did a whole lot of changing of HR stuff, like crazy. I wasn't part of the IPSA team, but it integrated with all that. And one of our discussions all the time was, how do we message it to the force? Because you've got 400 plus thousand, 500,000 people out there. And, in within that, you have 400, 500,000 variable opinions. You're putting a mail about shooting, and a bunch of infantry dudes. I was infantry, and be like, what is this? What is this? God, I've done it this way for 16 years, and this is how I'm going to teach it. and what y'all did is brilliant, because you went to the baseline, basically.
Yeah, we got fancy with it and called it double envelopment, because we hit the commander, and we hit the team leader at the same time, from two different directions, as they didn't know it was tied together. Like I said, that was just, we stumbled upon that just based off of our experience and our experience in the Army, right?
Right.
So my buddy was E7. He knew he was never going to make E8. I was the E7. I knew I was never going to make E8. We both had Article 15s and all sorts of stuff, and we both
It's
were
the
in
rule.
jobs. They didn't want us around soldiers anymore, and that's why we were in these stupid ass jobs. So we're just like, we the very worst thing for a leader is a retiring sergeant first class, because you have no, and I did this, you have no power here,
Yeah.
right? So in E7, you can't just, you can Article 15 me, but you got to do a whole bunch of work to do rank, right? Yeah,
That's
you can.
Congress is getting involved at that point. So
You got a whole bunch of work, and they can get a full bird colonel, and or but they've got to get, if they're captain, getting a full bird colonel to listen to you bitch about a sergeant first class to even start that process is not something you just do, right?
yeah,
And then
murder
when
needs to
you,
be involved.
yeah, and from retirement, I I haven't even looked at the only time that I saw my last NCOER was when I clicked the button to sign it, and I
Yeah,
didn't care what it said.
yeah.
So for
And
that
you
last year,
too, so who cares?
yeah, for that last year, I'm like, they're like, you're gonna get a bad NCOER, and be like, not a motherfucker in the world is going to read that. Nobody. They're like, well, we'll we'll give you Heroic 15. By the time that you get on the colonel's schedule to do
Stash
that,
overtime just to do that.
yeah, and just like, where's all your threats? What are you gonna do? And so that we were able to accomplish a lot in that space, just because people be like, well, you can't do that. Why? Why can't I do that? Well, it's gonna make people mad. By the time they realize they're mad, I'll be gone.
Yeah.
I'll be in the, and so we leveraged that, and that was my, coming out of the Army, um, and that actually, that helped um, propel me. It wasn't like, those weren't like calculated moves. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do this in marksmanship. The path that I had chosen for after the Army, it actually, just kind of fell in along with that path, because like 2014, I'm teaching shooting and it's all great. And around 2014, we had a firearms company reach out, and they were like, hey, we want to come to Fort Drum and do a demo. And we want to shoot some of our machine guns and our rifles. And I was like, let me ask. I was like, I don't know. And the basically the G3 and the illegal people were like, yeah, as long as they sign a waiver and they don't shoot guns, as long as it's you guys shooting guns and you shoot Army ammo, No problem. Like, okay. So as this guy's there, and he shows up with literally a truckload of machine guns, and the dudes, and we had ammo because I knew it was coming, so I had ammo for all the types of guns. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, when I get out, I want to be like that guy, not like as in that dude, but dude literally rolled up with like almost a brand new Suburban,
Yeah, with
black
machine guns, that's cool.
in the back and full of machine guns, and he's got on like like tri pants and like Arc'teryx jacket and shoes more than I made in a month in outfit, and a big ass watch. And I'm just like that would be cool, as being in the industry and just running around and shooting guns with people and hanging out. Everybody knows his name and all that sort of stuff. And so that's kind of where I set my sights. And it just so happened that guy was the military sales for Knights Armament Company.
Yeah.
So in 2018, I set this goal, and this was like August of 14. And so I set that goal. And then December of 2018, I walk into Nice Armament with a job, and I signed contracts in September of 18. So it was almost 4 years to the day when I got the job. But I interviewed, and they sent me an offer letter, and I signed an offer letter and all that sort of stuff. And then didn't get out till December. We did all that in September. So the last months in the army, I don't care. I have a job. You
I
you
know
can
where
tell
I'm
me,
going.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
tell me not to come into work for the rest of the time that I'm here and just show up back here in December. I'll move to Florida and I'll start working like right now. I don't. So 4 years and a couple months, I started as the military sales guy at Nice Armament Company. So just a goal. And then all the things in there, fixing armor marksmanship, fixing the qual, fixing everything that I felt was broken before I left the army, and then walking right into the exact job. Like I put the business card side by side on my desk. I have his old business card and I have my business card. And then to roll straight into that like 3 or 4 years later, and been there since like I say, December of 2018 is when I walked the stage. That was the 8th of December. I started work at nights on the 15th. So like literally a week later, walked stage on a Friday, walked into nights the next Friday, and been here ever since. And
Nice. That's awesome.
yeah, it's cool. I've got to go play more places and hang out with more dudes in cooler places since I got out than when I was in the army. There's places that I get to walk into now with a beard, and I'm less fat now, but I quit working out. I did all that retirement thing, and anything that was army. I don't use military time. I was done. I was done with the army in like 2013.
Like
So
C's
by
for cat,
what's that?
like C's for cat and D's for dog. No, that's Charlie Delta stuff anymore.
Sam, I don't know what this Sierra shit is you're talking about. Um, but as a bearded, fat, retired dude, I walked into some cool places that if I would have been in uniform, they would have stopped me at the door. And that's just a benefit of being at a super cool company that's got super cool contracts going on. Um, and I get still have involvement. I go to Benning, uh, but twice a year on average. So I'm still involved with them. I'm still talking to them. I still hear from those same people that's doing marksmanship stuff. Talking to dudes. I don't know if you use the app called Signal.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I see all the time, all the time.
yeah, lots of people. There's some people, I don't get it, but there's people out there that aren't using Signal. But I've had Signal messaging with dudes that are deployed,
Yeah,
and I just like, hey man, this is messing up on the gun. How do I fix it?
yeah.
And I'm like, I really hope you're not like throwing bullets right now. While you're on the phone with me and fucking wherever.
Hold a minute, I'm busy.
Yeah,
The
it's that
Wi-Fi here sucks.
story about Barrett, where they called Barrett, to fix a 50 cal in the middle of a firefight, Haven't had that, but I have been, text messages with dudes as soon as they get back onto the cop and get Wi-Fi again, and have messages back and forth with them. It just super cool. And then I started. Well, before I got the job at Knights, I interviewed with FN, and it was for a high level, you know, business development, military lead, high level thing. I was with VPs and the president and all this sort of stuff. And they were like, look, when a vet gets out, the first job that he has after the Army, they generally last about a year. And then they change jobs. They were just like, we see it all the time. And if you fail at this level of jobs, it wasn't like, a gun tester guy, right? It was like business development lead for a international,
Yeah. Legit.
multi-million dollar. They're like, if you fuck this up, it's going to be bad for you for a real long time. And they decided to go with some other people, which was perfectly fine because when we got into the job, they're like, I was the E7 trigger monkey dude, and they were just like, hey, describe your business acumen. And I'm like,
Big word.
pull my, let me Google that and be like, oh, yeah, I still have no idea what you're talking about. But that's what put me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Because I'd been on LinkedIn, that's one of the things when you're in the Army, they're like, start a LinkedIn. And so I go into LinkedIn Learning because I was on my free vet program for a year and have LinkedIn Learning. I go into LinkedIn Learning and I type in business acumen. And there's all these videos and
Yeah.
all the stuff you can learn on LinkedIn about business. And I was just like, this is pretty fucking cool. So I'm like studying for, like I was like studying for the promotion board, but I'm on LinkedIn Learning, trying to learn this stuff.
It's a
That
powerful
interview.
tool. It's a very, very powerful tool that people don't realize it's not just for posting your cat. Wrong
Right.
place.
Yeah, and it's not for, you know, and LinkedIn, if you're using it correctly, like you say, it's super powerful. Um, just and I've been doing, because I started my own company, a little side gig with shoot guns. It's basically the same shit I do anyway. Um, and so and using LinkedIn, but I've been studying a lot of marketing stuff, and marketing is all about touch points. It's all just about your possible customer, keeping you in mind. If they think they're like, man, I need this thing, and they think of you first, and you happen to have some piece of content or something, and you're just like, oh, you like guns? I like guns too. Check out my guns.
Good job.
Um, yeah. So I just been using LinkedIn to do that on the military sales side, because everybody in the Army's got a LinkedIn, right? Anybody's
Yeah.
leader has one, whether they
And you
check it or
filter
not.
it. You filter it
Yeah,
by U.S. Army. It's great.
yeah. Filter it and see who's there, see who's on it, and I can go in and just be like, well, and the other thing with LinkedIn before I get into this, once you get it rolling, and if anybody's just, if they're listening to us and they're just like, oh, LinkedIn sucks, bro, once you get it rolling, it's fire.
Yeah.
It is fire. Just posted up one of our dudes is starting his own company, him and his wife, and called Tax Skills. And basically what they're going to do is they're going to be basically hosting where a bunch of classes are. The website's just vetted instructors. Like I would go train with this dude, and it's just going to be a one-stop shop to find classes and competitions and stuff like that. But they posted up shooting the Knights machine gun. It's just some cool dudes, and I know where they are, but that doesn't matter, right? Just some cool dudes shooting a machine gun, and literally it was, a 28-second video. LinkedIn's rolling pretty good for me. That video, when I looked at it today, that video is at 42,000 impressions. It's like 7,000 people have watched it. It's been viewed for like 4,000 minutes, and it's a 28-second video, and it's like 4 or 5,000 minutes worth of viewing on that silly little video. That's Knights Armament machine gun,
Yeah.
and
Your
there's
marketing
been
director loves you for that.
so this machine gun has gone across 40,000 people's feed. They've seen it go by. The people that I've networked with are all, or not all, but I try to have decision makers and I try to have cool people. There's people in G8s, there's people in J8s, there's people at the Pentagon. And that brings me to a no shit there it was. But there's people that have purchasing power that are seeing these contracts or seeing people developing on this for the machine gun, and they're just on LinkedIn trying to do whatever. And here's my machine. And they're just like, oh, that's what that is, because they're pencil pushers and they're just seeing pieces of paper. They don't know what it means. They just know this dude wants it and he has no money, but this guy has money over here, and they're trying to move that around.
Yeah.
Right. So we're at AUSA, and you'll love this. So we're at AUSA, and this dude in probably a 1988 suit. Well, that was the last time he fitted, was probably 88. And it was probably brand new then when the last time that he fitted. And like this thing didn't even attempt to close. Right. And if he would have laid down, he would have been taller than he was standing up. And there's nobody at the booth. It's like day 3. Nobody's around. We're tired. And this guy rolls up and he stops about 3 or 4 feet from the booth, puts his hands on his little pudgy hips. And he's just like, why should I buy from you? And I'm just like, and I look down at his badge and he's just like J93 755 or whatever. And shit that was all like commo, right? The 5 and 7 shop and all this sort of shit at the Pentagon. This dude is never going to see a gun, let alone see a contract. Right? He's so far bound, he doesn't. They don't even have security where they go to because they're that unimportant. And he's just got this "you're in DC and I work at the Pentagon" attitude. And I'm like, well, you already do. Like, you have been for 40 years. I was like, because you haven't heard of us tells me all that I need to know about how important you are to sell guns to.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? I was like, have you heard of the M110 sniper rifle? Well, of course I've heard of the M110. I was like, you know whose name is on the side? And he's like, no. I say, it says Knights Armament right on it. I was like, right on the side of the gun, got our logo on it and everything. I was like, you know those little Picatinny rails that are on M4s? Yes. I was like, all of those, if you open them up, all of those say Knights Armament on the inside.
We used to call them the night rail for years.
And he's like, well, how would I know that? And I was like, then why are you here asking why you should buy from me? So
you said M110. I gotta jump in here on this one. So, and golly, now it's been forever. 2006. So spring of 06, long time ago, when the M110 was like the XM110 back then, you know. And so I was a scout team leader, and so we jumped those our whole platoon. That's all we did, like every day was like we went to the range, got them all sighted in, zero, good to go. You know, we're plinking pretty good, about 500 yards out, having a great time. And then the next like 7 days in a row was every day was jump out of a C-130, jump out of a C-17, jump out of a box truck. It didn't matter. Like we were just jumping out of helicopters and whatever we could, Chinooks, and we jump, and we would literally walk over to the range and go shoot and see if it maintains zero. Like how often did you get, you know? And those are the funnest things to do. And those little instances, that's a big word for me. Are like the best thing when you're like shifting from your normal day and like, hey, here's an unlimited supply of bullets, and here's a really cool gun that no one else has, you know, and go have fun. Just don't die on the landing part, you know.
Yeah, just we know you can fall out of airplanes. We know this gun can fall out of an airplane. Let's try to keep everything together at the end of that.
Oh, it was great because all those guys on the ground were like, get all together, like because like we're jumping glass. I mean, that's a when you're
Yeah.
jumping glass, it changes the like. You're like, we're gonna do 2 layers of bubble wrap just to make sure. So, and those are like those are the Mark IV, the Leopold Mark IV
Yeah.
on that. I think. And because the 5 wasn't out yet, I mean, that's a $3,000 scope. So
Yep. And they're just, and the XM110, because when it came out, we got in 2 SR-25s first, and then we got fielded in Afghanistan. We got fielded 2, one or two, I think it was 2 XM110s. And the very first mission that they take the XM110 on, and they've been shooting it and all that sort of stuff. They finally go on a mission. They got hit hard. That was the night that Jared Monty, or the day going in tonight that Jared Monty got his Medal of Honor from. But the 110 was sitting about. They were eating chow. They'd just done like hauled a bunch of supplies up the mountain, and the 110 was sitting probably about 4 or 5 feet from the guy when the firefight started. And it took a round through the buttstock, and it went through the tube. So it went through the buttstock, through the receiver extension, and passed right through. And so the kid finally gets over there to grab it, tries to charge it to make sure it had a bullet in it, and it wouldn't go. But he looked and it had a bullet in it, so he fired it. And the buffer came back and pushed all the dents out of the receiver extension, and the gun ran. So the rest of the deployment, they got like duct tape wrapped around the stock because there's no parts for it because it's an XM gun, right?
right, yeah.
So that whole deployment. And then I had forgotten about that. And then when I started at Knights, my buddy was like, yeah, that was an XM110 that we had on the hill that got shot that ran for the rest of the deployment. I was like, he's super sniper dude. And I was like, you don't have to have the serial number for that gun, do you? And he's like, yeah, somewhere. So he finally, it took him about 3 months, but he finally finds that data book that had the serial number in it. And so I go into the archives and I check, and because we got files on when the guns come back and when they refurb them and all that. So the first refurb, when it came back, they had noted that at some point the buttstock and the receiver extension, like the buttstock got changed out, but the receiver extension, when they pulled it apart, had bullet hole through there, and they're like, receiver extension had bullet, passed through. And that gun got for refurb for like, I think it was like 3 years when it finally came back. So it ran for that whole deployment and all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
And that's just one of the cool things about being a Knights. And then, like I say, I started a little side company that shoots guns. Basically, I like shooting competition because when I left the Army, I was the marksmanship program developer for the United States Army.
Yeah.
When it came to the Army shooting guns, it was the infantry school was a proponent. I was the guy at the infantry school that was responsible for that, and then everybody else, AMU, all the sort of stuff. So on December 7th of 2017, I was the Army marksmanship dude.
Yeah.
Right? It was, and on the 8th, I walked the stage, and I didn't want to be like my entire career. I did not want to be the guy that was like, well, this is who I am. I was a drill sergeant or whatever. Because the day that I walked the stage, as soon as I walked off that stage, I was not the marksmanship program developer for the United States Army.
Gosh.
Um, so, and for a while it was cool. Like, hey, I'm the military sales guy for Knights Armament, but I was still talking about shooting all the time. Sales guy means I'm trying to sell you guns. I'm not
Right.
talking about shooting.
So
And but I'm still in all those circles. So I was like, I didn't want to, 2 years ago I was a marksmanship program developer. You should listen to me. I didn't want to be that guy. So my boss got me into competitive shooting, and the series that we were shooting that we liked is called Gas Gun. Basically, we took Knights guns there and we shot Knights guns, and we did a good job, and it was good. Uh, they canceled that series, and so we're like, man, what are we gonna do? Da da da. And one of the guys that we know was a battalion sergeant major at a regiment. Now he runs a range up in Georgia. And he was just like, and we're talking about it. We happen to be there for something else. And we were talking about it, and he's like, hey, you know what? He's like, You could stop being a pussy and run your own shit. And we were like, I guess we could do that. He's like, if nobody's running what you want to shoot, run it. Well, that turned into a whole company that's doing pretty good.
That's
First
awesome, man.
year, we talked about coaching and entrepreneur stuff and stuff like that. So first year we made $3,000. Last year, so that was 2019. Well, 2019 we made about $50. 2020 we made about probably 3 grand, 3,500. 21 we brought that up to about 30K. 22 we did 60K, and right now, middle of August, we're up 17 points for the calendar year, or not the calendar year, but 1 year ago, over 1 year, we're up 17 points, and year to date, we're up 47 points.
Nice. That's
So,
awesome.
and it's just literally, it's a go shoot guns from 100 yard to 800 yards, 3 divisions, and
That's great.
there's
Where is this at? Is it Florida?
it's called
Or
Quantified Performance, and we start out with matches in Georgia, and last year we did a expansion, which whether that was smart or not, it's still too early to tell. But we went from 2 matches a year to last year we had 9, and then this year we've had 26 on the schedule. But the 26, 2 didn't sell well because they were like in Pennsylvania or something weird like that. And then 1 right now is kind of on the bubble, but basically we've got matches happening from Quantico all the way down into Lakeland, Florida, which we're just at this weekend, which is just west of Orlando. So from Quantico, Virginia, all the way down in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. We had events in Texas this year, and we have events in Nevada every year. So just expanding, but the thing with entrepreneurship, especially for a veteran entrepreneur, there is a metric fuck ton of shit that you need to learn, and you have to learn it on the fly. And I was talking about it with a guy today. I just did a little comment on his thing, and he was talking about entrepreneurship, and I was like, I basically look at running a business as a super long selection course, because when you wake up in the morning, you never know what the day's going to bring. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday. Yesterday, you could have had a viral post that everybody and their brother's seeing. And then today, whatever you post gets like 1 like, right?
you spend the
But that
most
has
time
no bearing on, yeah. Tomorrow you could be at 1 like, or tomorrow you could be viral. And you just don't know. So you just hammer through the day. And that's what I've been having to learn for the past 3 years, is basically that, because it went from something that we did twice a year that we went and played, and then we turned it into a business, and then having to learn taxes and marketing, and we're not making enough money to hire anybody yet, but I still have to learn hiring and all that sort of stuff, because hopefully it gets big enough to where I have to hire someone.
Yeah.
And it's just but it's not impossible, right? And that's what I want people to understand, is all that information is there. LinkedIn has a learning thing on it. There's guys like you that do coaching and all that sort of stuff. There's people out there that have this knowledge that you don't have to go to jail or do that sort of stuff, or business fail. You can get through it, especially for vet dudes and chicks. There's all sorts of stuff out there. Yeah.
Well, it's awesome, man. Man, it's been a lot of fun to talk, and I love to talk more, just privately, and for maybe we have to do part 2 of this podcast sometime, because it's a lot of fun. But definitely want to give me those links, and we'll put them in the comments, or in the description of this episode, for your shooting competition, and then we'll get excuse me, I think reading the gunfighter manual is a real big asset and tool for people no matter what.
Hey,
That was really the
I
whole,
guess
whole
with,
pause. I hope it
yeah,
didn't lose all.
no,
So,
it locked up there for a minute. I think it'll be okay.
but yeah, definitely give me the links for your company, and definitely want to give props to that. It's a great organization, and what y'all doing. Love watching your video shooting. The one you had the other day was your setup was pretty legit. I loved it. So, and then we'll definitely put the link for the gunfighter manual out
Okay.
there on APD, because it's a really good read for anybody who's never shot before, or even someone who's shot their entire life. It's a great product out there. So we'll wrap this up, and it's been a whole lot of fun.